creating a reel every day is a ton of work, but that's like essential right now in the algorithm. When I'm posting a picture, it doesn't do nearly as well as a video. So I'm having to create videos almost every single day. Welcome to Life Unleashed,
the podcast all about creating the best life for you and your furry best friend.
If you're a dog mom on the go, juggling life, work, and the endless joys of being a dog parent, then you're in the right place. I'm Dani.
And I'm Nick.
And together with the incredible dog mom community from Tails Up Pup, we're here to share advice, stories, and the obsession we have over the love for our dogs.
Get ready to laugh, learn, and lean on each other because life with your dog just got even more awesome.
Welcome to the dark side of owning a small business.
You make it sound so scary.
The dark side. Well, we always get comments of people being like, oh my gosh, it must be great. Like you're living the dream. And like we are living our dream, but there are a lot of dark sides to owning a small business. Downfalls, bad things, not good things. So I figured we should talk about it.
The thing that's interesting about all of this stuff is that I feel like it's everyone's individual perspective. Like for us, I think we probably feel that there's more good than bad for us and like our lifestyle and what we want. But many other people, I think, like would probably disagree with that.
Nick and I also have very different perspectives on this in general. Like he would rather work for himself than do anything else in life. Where if we went out of business or had to start over, I feel like I would probably rather get a job working for someone else than start another business.
I feel like you say that until you went back to doing that.
Well, whenever people talk to me about like wanting to work for a small business or start a small business, I always tell them working for a small business is better than owning the small business because you get all the perks of, the good parts, but you don't have to deal with most of the bad parts when you work for one.
Yeah, maybe. I guess it depends on the small business. I mean, small business has like a very wide range. I feel like American.
I think technically it's like 150 employees or less is like what a small business is. So.
Yeah, compared to us, that seems like a massive business. But I guess like if you're comparing it to like Apple or something, then like, yeah, that's a very small business.
If you work for a small business that has like 5-10 employees, if you don't own it, yes, you don't have control over anything because like the owners will have all that control. But a lot of times they let you weigh in and give your opinion, which is just as good, I feel like.
I feel like you could probably see like really great small businesses that are so fun to work for. And then you could also have like a very tyrannical boss owner of a small business that would be like terrible to work for. I mean, all that can happen like with a manager in a big company, but I feel like you could see a really wide gamut in the small business world.
I will cut to the chase and say the top things that I think are the dark side, and then we can get into it. Time, money, and control are all things that people probably see as being like, oh, I would really want that, but are actually like the hardest parts of being a business owner. Yeah,
I think you can also like look at a lot of like the inverse of what people say are like the best parts, and like that is like the time aspect, like or like the you're your own boss, you get to make your own schedule part. Like that is true, but that is the dark side of that is you end up finding yourself like actually having to, work more and having a hard time pulling yourself away. You have to be the person that says, hey, you can take a break now. And, when your livelihood is on the line, it's sometimes very hard to do that. Where I feel like if you have like a traditional job, when your time comes, yes, I'm sure people do plenty of work at home and things like that, but there's a little bit better delineation. I think when you own a small business, you really feel like you're on all the time.
Yeah, that's so true. I think in the time aspect, like right now we're dealing with maternity leave. And as a business owner, I get both sides of the argument because the number one thing people are wanting is paid time off for maternity leave from their job. And so I get both sides because as a mom, I would love to have at least 12 weeks of paid time off because then you get to truly focus on raising your newborn and just like there's so much involved in a brand new baby that you have to put so much effort into, and you're running on lack of sleep. And a lot of times the man does have to go back to work. So if you're doing all on your own, like that is a lot. And so yes, you would want 12 weeks of paid time off. But as the business owner, it's a lot to expect a business to be able to afford to pay someone for 12 weeks when they're not contributing to the business,
Well, one thing that I can guarantee for sure is for a lot of small businesses out there, if you said, everyone deserves the 12 weeks off paid paid. If you made every business in like the whole world do that, so many small businesses would go out of business having to do that.
Yeah.
So like, okay, well maybe they'd get paid for those 12 weeks, but then the business would no longer be there and wouldn't be able to pay them anymore. So that's the thing, is like, it's always the balancing between like what you want to do. I think as a small business owner, like we always compare ourselves to the large business. It's like, we would of course want to offer healthcare. We would of course want to offer 12 weeks paid leave. We would of course want to have unlimited paid time off, all these like really great things. However, when it, comes down to it, a small business has typically a way less capital to work with and to be able to do those things. And that's why the bigger businesses are able to do it. But as a small business, if you did those things, you probably wouldn't be in business.
And so now personally, like as we have this baby, I wasn't even able to take a full week off in reality. Like I was in the basement doing orders 1 week postpartum, because if I don't, then we don't make money. And if we don't make money, then we can't pay bills and we can't continue our business, and our business could go out of business if I wasn't down there continuing on. And so it's a very hard balance of figuring out when you can take time off and how you can continue your business. And this is very much for a business like ours that has to ship things. If you have a business that is more of like service based, I feel like you could take more time off around what you needed to. But this like goes into a problem we've always had of taking time off with vacation and figuring out how can we leave. So as we had employees, they were able to somewhat run the business without us, but it always was a problem because everyone doesn't know how to do everyone else's job. And so now we're back to square one of like how we used to do it beforehand. If we were to go on vacation, we would just have to put on the website that orders aren't shipping out until this date that we get back. And still, if all the orders continued coming in as normal, then it could be, if we took a 2 week vacation, it could be 4 weeks before that order ships out because we would get backed up.
I think there's two things that I was thinking when you were talking about that. The first is, of course, we could have planned to take like more maternity leave if we would have, had better savings and things like that to afford to not be able to make any money.
But what would the long term of the business be if we still took that time off completely?
Well, I think it would. I mean, of course, it still hurts the business.
Yeah.
I think that makes it really difficult. Most businesses can't just like, the people that go on maternity leave, their work doesn't shut down for the time. So it's very hard to like totally shut down in a business to totally not move. The other thing that I was thinking is like, there's this really fine line, and I think it probably hurts like the really small businesses the most, is like once you have a certain amount of people, you can do enough cross training to where everyone probably does know most people's jobs. And so you can at least probably go away for a week or two and like the whole place doesn't, quote unquote burn down. But the more I'm thinking about it, I don't know that that's necessarily true, because as an example, like think about certain things like IT, for instance. Like if the IT guy's gone, and something really bad happens, it's like he may have to do something while he's on his vacation because there's no one else there. You don't always have multiple of these people around. So if that person wants to, go on vacation, and something bad happens, they might be having to step in and do something.
Or those people are out of luck.
Or they're out of luck and they have to wait till they're back.
Yeah.
I think it's really hard, particularly for things that are very specialized. You can't expect somebody to know how to sew, embroider, to personalize things, to do literally to cut the bandana. You can't expect someone to know how to do every piece of that, particularly when you're small.
And do every piece well.
Right.
And then in a timely manner, because it's your full-time job. So then if both of us left our full-time jobs, we can't expect someone to do all
two
of that.
people's work. Yeah. That would be hard.
So the other thing is money, because owning a business is very expensive and the money has to come from somewhere. And the more that you understand how these bigger businesses run, you understand that a lot of them have, loans, or they have investors, they have money coming in from other places. So if you don't have that as a small business, how are you having the funds to create this brand new big collection or even start and get off the ground? The money has to come from somewhere. And so it's just it's hard to even compete with these bigger companies. And I know that we're not, like, our collections will never be as big as like a PetSmart Christmas, but to have the money to invest in those things, and especially now I'm just thinking Christmas because that's what we're working on, we have to invest in our Christmas products months before we would ever see that money come back. So you have to have enough money to put in to get all of those products so that you can photograph them and have them ready for launch.
And the thing is like Christmas time is our best time of year. It's when we sell the most stuff, which means we have to buy the most inventory and, outlay the most money, but we're outlaying it with the cash flow from, the fall and really even the summer, which is, not as busy as Christmas. So you're having the less cash flow coming in when you're having to pay for something that's going to be your biggest expense of the year. So that's always you have to prepare for that.
I feel like money is the topic that we discuss the most on this podcast. So I feel like I don't have many other new things to say about it other than owning a business is very expensive.
Well, the other thing I think is more the mentality behind the money is like every dollar that we invest, spend in the business, ultimately is a dollar that doesn't get to go in our pocket. Now, that's okay when it's an investment and you think, okay, I'm going to spend this dollar, which will allow me to make $2 later. But, truly that's literally every penny that is spent, you have to make that decision. And I don't think most people, if you're working a normal job, you don't really have to think about it quite that much. It's like, oh, well, if I, buy this extra thing or, I used more paper today than I, meant to, or ink or whatever, that's not really affecting your paycheck. Now, if you're doing it crazily, then maybe your boss would kind of be like, hey, why are you using so much of this stuff? But day to day, you don't think about it that way. And when you're a small business, literally every penny that you spend, you really have to account for, because ultimately that's a dollar or penny that you don't get to bring home.
And that goes into mistakes. Like when you mess something up, it costs money. And then that usually is trash. So then it's wasted money. So then you have to be really mindful and make sure you double check everything before you initiate it, because the more mistakes you have, the more money you're burning. And it matters more when it's money that would be going into your savings account or into paying your bills.
Well, I mean, yeah, if you make a big mistake, or like say we bought way too much stuff for something for Christmas, for instance, and it was a big mistake, that literally could mean maybe we're not going to be able to pay our mortgage in December. And so that just is a whole level of stress that I don't think like the average person at a normal job, is having to deal with. And that's probably why a lot of people don't sign up to have their own business.
Well, and that topic really goes into my third point of control, because decision making, if you are indecisive or you have a really hard time deciding, and even if you don't, it can be really hard to decide certain things, especially when you haven't done it before. But even if you have, it can be really hard to decide how much inventory are we buying? When are we buying it? Are we going to restock? Are we going to design this completely ourselves? Is it coming from overseas? Who's manufacturing this? Any decision in your business. Are we going to hire employees? Where are we going to store all this stuff? All of the decisions that you have to make in owning a business can be really hard. And so you think that you want to have the control to decide, but also it can be really hard and be a dark side of owning a business.
And pretty much everything that you mentioned there does have that added component of the stress of, if I'm wrong on this literally means, possibly my paycheck. I just don't think, day to day, most people in a normal job, you're having to deal with that part of the stress. Of like, if this decision's bad, I'm not making money. I know before when we would, as our whole team, we'd be sitting around talking about collections, and a lot of people would have ideas. And the thing is like, you want those ideas and you want them to come out there. But ultimately, if, Inslee came up with an idea and it ended up flopping or whatever, she was still going to get paid the same amount of money no matter what. Mm-hmm. The person who loses on that is the business owner. Now, on the upside of that, and this is a great thing of owning a business, if you're right and you do well, guess what? You get to reap the rewards of that. And I think owning a business now more than ever, I feel like when you're younger, you're like, how do these people, why do they get to make so much money when they're the owners? And sometimes eventually they're maybe not even doing that much of the work. They had to risk a lot of stuff. And if it goes bad, they're also on the hook for that money. The employee's not on the hook for the money. They're not going to, lose everything because it was of a bad decision.
And that was an example. Inslee doesn't really have bad ideas.
No, right. It's typically me that's been the one with the bad ideas, I feel like.
It is definitely the hardest for Nick because he is a male and our business is very female dominated. And so things that Nick likes might be different than what our audience likes. But you've come to realize that, and you don't you're not super opinionated about bringing something that you know wouldn't sell well, because it does affect you too.
I also have the tendency to get very passionate about certain things. And when I'm like have conviction and passion, I feel like I can be pretty persuasive over what I want and convince Dani or the team, like, this is what we should do. And then, if that was a wrong decision, then I probably bought way more than I should have because I was so passionate about it.
We've definitely learned that in most cases, we try to invest the smallest amount on something new and then know that we can always restock as long as there's time. The hardest situation to do that is if you're buying something overseas, because a lot of times they have higher minimums. They make you buy a bunch of inventory, which is more expensive, and then you have to put it somewhere. And the time that it takes, because they're manufacturing it for you and they have to ship it from overseas. And so that shipping takes a long time and is really expensive. So we've paid like $1,000 in shipping to get things before. And, that's just money in shipping that doesn't go towards anything else. So you just have to be mindful about how you're investing, where you're choosing to, and like maybe it would cost more to have that produced in the United States, but when you include the amount that you're going to have to buy in quantities and the shipping, it might end up being better for you to be able to buy smaller quantities.
The other thing too about like the control piece is you have to make so many variations of decisions in different realms. So that could be a financial decision. That could be a hiring decision. It could be a product decision. And so like you have to, as the business owner, be comfortable even in areas that you feel like you're not an expert in. Where I feel like when you're an employee, most of the time your job is a little bit more specialized. So like you can get very comfortable in like, this is what I do. This is kind of my realm of decision making. But I'm not going to have to make like a accounting decision today. And when you're a business owner, particularly the smaller the business you are, you kind of have to wear all those different hats. And even though you're not an expert in those things, you still have to make the decision. So that kind of requires you to be a jack of all trades in a way. I love that about being a small business owner. I really do not like being kind of pigeonholed into, this is my very narrow responsibility and being ultra specialized. I don't like that. I like being able to, I get bored like if my job is very specific like that. I feel like being a business owner is good for my personality because I get to do all the different types of stuff. But I think a lot of people might get stressed out about that. They're like, I know nothing about that, so I can't make a decision.
I'm thinking of something else that is the dark side of owning a business. And that is that you get to do all the things that you wanted to do to start this business, but you also have to be the bad guy in certain situations. And that could be if you hire employees, you get to do the fun parts of hiring them and giving them a job and doing all that and possibly becoming friends or having a good relationship. But at the end of the day, if that person chooses to leave or you have to fire them or have hard conversations, or if they're doing something that they shouldn't be doing, you have to be that person, and that can be really hard. And if you're not hiring employees, then a lot of times in customer service, there are things that you will have to deal with, and you will have to be the bad guy or have to just deal with situations that might cause you anxiety. And just dealing with people in general can be really hard in different personalities and different situations. Or if you think that you didn't send the wrong product or you didn't send them a defective thing and they are saying that you did, you have to deal with those situations. Or maybe a missing package and that's just out of your control. But things like that are definitely really hard too.
I think a lot of times, at least before I owned a business, I kind of had this idea that the owner doesn't have to do like any of the grunt work. They're kind of like, have all their, team members under them doing all the stuff. And I actually feel like, particularly when you're relatively small, it's like the opposite of that. I feel like as the owner, you're having to, flex and float in between a lot of the stuff, and you're still doing tons of the different grunt work pieces, and having to pick up, different areas depending on, where you're needed. I feel like you think about, the boss doesn't have to do any of that stuff. It's like, I was the one half the time taking out like the trash, for instance, and things like that. Those are just the little things you don't think about per se, that it's like, you're going to have to do those things.
Oh yeah. And cleaning the bathrooms. That's my least favorite job. And we did have a cleaner in the office because I was not going to do that with a bunch of other people in the bathroom. But at home, it's still my least favorite job, but I do it. But someone has to do things like that. So keep it in mind.
One thing that I feel like we can talk more about is like really just like the separating like your leisure time from working.
Work-life balance.
Yeah, the work-life balance. So many people, I think, think that the scheduling part is the best part about owning a small business. And there are so many good benefits of that about that. You truly are. No one's going to fire you because you're the boss. If you're like, I want to go on a walk at, 12 o'clock or anything like that. However, compared to a lot of our friends that I look at, they truly have their weekends to themselves.
You get to turn work off when you're off the clock, where we don't get to do that.
Right. And sometimes it's like if there's work that needs to be done or it was like a busy week and you physically couldn't get it all done during the week, well, you're probably going to have to work that weekend, and it just is what it is.
Yeah, that's the thing, is the work has to get done. So we know that we have to decide if we're going to go on this walk in the middle of the day, that means we're going to have to do that hour or two that we took in the middle of the day somewhere else, because unless we're just slower and don't have work to be done, which is pretty rare, then we have to do that work at a different time. So are we going to choose to do it on the weekend? Are we going to choose to work until 8 o'clock at night? If we want to go on a 2-week vacation to Scotland, we can do that. Absolutely. We can do whatever we want because we're the boss and we get to decide what we're going to do and when we're going to do it. But if we took those 2 weeks off, we're going to have to work a lot more when we get back, or beforehand, or both, to make up for that lost time.
And there have been so many times during our busy season where I was at the office at 6 a.m. and we were not stopping working till 9 or 10 p.m. at night, doing that 7 days a week for multiple weeks in a row.
I do think that people in a traditional job who take 2 weeks off to go on a trip do feel that to an extent, because when they get back, someone probably didn't do their work for them, so they have to make up work, but they're not having to work extra hours to do it. They can still fit it in, and they're also not having to run an entire business. They're just doing their one portion of their job.
Right. And I mean, it's more you are totally the last common denominator of like the work's there. It's got to get done. And yes, if you're busier, you're probably making more money. So there's that benefit of it, but it really does weigh on you. If you're working 6-7 days a week, 12 plus hours a day, eventually that gets tiring. I feel like most people, are used to kind of like the 8-hour day or something like that, and actually having their weekends and being able to recharge. It just can really weigh on you not being able to be off and having to do that for weeks on end.
Well, Nick used to say to me, like, why are you responding to this email or this DM right now? Like, we're going to dinner or whatever. But there's two aspects. One, they're going to have to get responded to at some time. And so am I going to sit down and respond to 20 at a time, or would I rather do one here and there? But also with the DM aspect, especially, that those people are messaging and probably interested in buying something. And if I don't respond quickly, they likely will not care anymore or go find it somewhere else. So if I can respond to them quickly, then I likely, already have the fish on the hook. So I can reel them in and get them to buy the thing that they were interested in if I am quick with my response.
I think a lot of this, like, that we've learned over time is just you have to set limits on yourself and know, like, how much you can work and, not really feel like you're going to burn out. And, for us, when we're really busy, we do that. Other times it's like, what, I have to take the day off or else it's going to be, I'm not going to be mentally healthy.
Like you said in the beginning, the good outweighs the bad. I just thought it would be a fun podcast episode to talk about like the dark side, but still we choose to do this, and we are so grateful we get to do this, and we have so much fun doing it that I just think that so many people think this is the best thing ever, and I wanted to highlight that there are downfalls to owning a business as well.
Yeah, I feel like I didn't want any of this to come across as like us complaining or anything like that. I feel like it's better to show, like you said, the realistic side of owning a business, because as with most things, we like to share the positive aspects and all of that type of stuff. And I think it can end up looking very glamorous and all of that stuff. But, if you were to be doing it, I think you would, or if you're thinking about doing it, it's good to know all these other aspects to consider before, being like, oh, that's got to be the best thing ever.
Oh, I have one more thing.
Yes.
This has to do with work-life balance, but we run our business completely on social media. And now that we're not running ads, like, I am the full, like, advertising basically. So I have to post on social media every single day. I have to show up. I have to show my face or show my product or create a reel or have a photo ready and a caption ready. And so these things are essential to bringing sales and us making money and to our community who is looking forward to it. So if I want to, have a lazy day, I had to have either prepped it or I have to suck it up and create something. And creating a reel every day is a ton of work, but that's like essential right now in the algorithm. When I'm posting a picture, it doesn't do nearly as well as a video. So I'm having to create videos almost every single day. And that could definitely be tiring. If you haven't done it before, I feel like it's easy to look at it and be like, oh, I could do that. But it definitely is a ton of work to create a new video, a new concept, a new idea, and execute it every single day.
Yeah, one thing too that like I remember when I was working for somebody, there'd be days where you like weren't feeling it, It's like you go in there and you're not doing as much work as like you should be doing that day. I definitely had days like that, and I still made the same amount of money. When you own your own business and you mail it in or you're just not showing up fully, it's like that is gonna affect how much money you're bringing home. And so like I guess what I'm saying is like it kind of forces you to like feel like you really have to work hard every single day because like truly your paycheck is on the line.
I feel like that's the point of this whole entire podcast and the dark sides is that at the end of the day, you have a ton of stress because everything that you're doing affects the money, whether you're spending money or making money. All these decisions revolve around it. And that's like the most important aspect because you have to make enough money to pay your bills and you want to make money and you want to be able to buy things that you want to buy and you don't want to make bad decisions and you don't want to have anxiety over certain situations. So it's just something to consider if you're thinking about starting a business or if you have started, that at the end of the day, a lot of decisions rely on you and you're going to have to be, carrying the weight of that.
Yeah, it's really you have to be very self-reliant if you're going to be a business owner because ultimately it comes down to, are you showing up? Are you making the decisions? Are you doing everything that you got to do? Because if you don't, I feel like particularly big businesses, it's kind of like it seems that there's enough people involved that if one person is sick that day or whatever, that like no one's paychecks, no one, the business is not going to be affected. But like the smaller you get, like each person is so important that like everything can be affected just by one person.
Thank you guys so much for listening, and maybe you learned something new about small business owners.
And if this didn't deter you, everything that we said, maybe you should start a business.
Thank you guys so much. Don't forget to rate this podcast 5 stars, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.